Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2015 Ford Explorer, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Direct Connect baseplate kit with removable arms. So this is a way the front of your Explorer will look when you're unhooked and kind of just cruising around town. Now to me, I don't really think it looks all that bad. Baseplate isn't going to be too noticeable. The baseplate's going to kind of sit flush with the bumper, so you're not going to have to worry about anything kind of protruding out. And in my opinion, it's just going to kind of blend in. Now we're able to maintain this clean look because we have removable arms. So the way these work is really simple. Whenever you're ready to flat tow, you can just install the arms. So these are just going to push into place, and they're going to come with a pin and clip, which slides through the base plate and through our removable arm. And then you'll just push that clip on like that, so they're not going to go anywhere. The other side will simply install the same way. Now, one thing I'm not too crazy about is when you go to remove your arms. The pins can be a little tricky to pull out. You don't have a ton of room there. So if it were me and I flat towed the Explorer to our campsite or wherever we're going and planned on driving around for a day or two, but keeping in mind that I'm going to hook up relatively soon to flat tow again, if it were me, I'd probably just leave these arms installed for that time being. If I didn't plan on towing for a while, I would go through the process to remove them and give us that clean look again. And since the base plate is direct connect, once we have our removable arms in, it's going to be super easy to hook our tow bar to. So you'd simply just line your tow bar up, take that pin, slide it through the base plate, and pop that clip in. The safety chain loops are going to be pretty easy to get to too, since they are relatively open. And you would just take your cable and clip that around it. So the base plate is going to work with many different tow bars, and even if it is a different brand of tow bar, chances are pretty good you're still going to be able to use it by getting some adapters that allow it to pair up with our base plate. Now the tow bar that we have here today is one I particularly like. It's the Roadmaster Falcon All-Terrain. It's really well built, really easy to use. It's non-binding, and it's also going to have these cool channels on the side, which allows our safety cables and our wiring to pass through. That way we don't have to worry about it dragging down and scraping the ground. So there's going to be a total of 5 major components that you're going to need to flat tow your Explorer down the road. You're going to have the base plate, which just provides us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook up our tow bar to it. The tow bar is the second main component here. This is actually going to be the physical link that connects to the front of your Explorer to the back of your motorhome. Third main component is going to be your safety cables. Now those are going to be there in the event of a catastrophic disconnect. The safety cables are going to keep everything hooked together. Your fourth main component is going to be your tow bar wiring. So the tow bar wiring is going to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Explorer, keeping you safe and legal. And the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. So what the braking system is going to do is apply the brakes inside of your Explorer whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome. So that's going to bring you to a more safe and predictable stop and reduce the wear and tear on your motorhome's braking system. So at the end of the day, the base plate is going to give you that peace of mind knowing you have a solid and reliable connection point. And it's really not going to be an eyesore either. It does give us plenty of space here in the middle to mount up our other flat tow components. However, it does not come included with any brackets to do that, so that's something you're going to need to pick up here at etrailer. Now, as far as the installation goes, believe it or not, it's really not too bad as far as base plates go by any means. Really nothing too crazy involved. For the most part, it just bolts right up. You do have to take the fascia off, but everything's really easy to get to, and there's not a whole lot of fasteners that actually hold it in place. But speaking of that install, let's go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our install, we're going to be here at the front of our Explorer. You're going to want to go ahead and pop the hood. And the first thing we're going to need to do is remove this plastic piece here, which is our upper fascia. We're going to have two plastic Pushman style fasteners, which are here and here. And to get them out, you can take a flathead screwdriver and pry underneath the head. And then if you need to, kind of pry underneath the base of the fastener to get it removed. Then along this front edge, we're going to have 7 10mm bolts that we're going to pull out as well. With all of them out, you can grab it and set it off to the side. Now if we move to our front wheel wells, along the edge, we're going to have 4 5.5mm screws. Go ahead and pull those out. And then we're going to have 2 more behind this piece of trim here. So you can kind of just grab that and just kind of work it out of the way. One of them will be right here. And the other one's going to be on the side right there. Once I have this one out, I'll repeat this same process on the other side. Now underneath the front of our Explorer, along the whole front edge here, we're going to have 9 8mm bolts that we're going to pull out just like this. Now if your Explorer has fog lights on the front, here on the back side of those we can disconnect them. This is what ours looks like. There's going to be a tab here on the side. You push that in and pull down on the connector to disconnect it. So that's what that tab looks like there. We're going to do that on both sides. Now with an extra set of hands, we can actually remove our front fascia. So you want to start at each corner, and if you just pull outward carefully, it will release the tabs. And what you can do is pull that front fascia off, and then we'll just set it off to the side somewhere safe. Now if we move down here to the driver's side, we're going to have our ambient air temperature sensor. We need to get that out of the way, and what we're going to do is just take a flathead screwdriver, pry behind it, and you can simply just pop it out. We'll kind of just push this off to the side and let it hang for now. Now if we look at our bumper beam, we're going to have 4 factory holes in it, and what we need to do is enlarge the outside holes just big enough to allow us to pass the 1/2-inch size bolt through it. So I'm going to use a die grinder bit to open it up. Don't need to remove a whole lot of material, so if you don't have one of these, you can use a hand file. I'm just going to simply enlarge it just enough to get our 1/2-inch bolt through. Now with an extra set of hands, we can grab our base plate and put it into position. So these two brackets here are going to go behind our bumper beam, and they're going to line up with these two inside holes. We'll kind of roll it in there and lift up on it. Once we have it lined up, we're going to take the 3.5 inch by 1/2 inch bolt and the larger block here, run it through that hole and out of the back side of the base plate. Now on the back side where our bolts pass through, and for all of the hardware that's going to hold our base plate on, we're going to want to put a drop of red Loctite. And for these, we're going to get the hardware started hand tight, take a split lock washer, followed by a hex nut. Now we can get the rest of our hardware that's going to secure the base plate loosely installed. And anything we do to this side, we're also going to do to the other side because it'll be set up the same way. So for this attachment point here, we're going to take one of the thicker 3/4 inch spacers, and this is just going to sit behind our base plate and in between our bumper beam. And we want all the holes in the bumper and the base plate to line up with our tube spacer here. So we'll set that back there. We're going to take one of our 2.5 inch bolts. Again, put a little Loctite on it. Make sure everything's lined up. And push that bolt through everything. Now it's going to be a little tricky to see back there, but it is easy to get your hand behind the bumper beam to get the rest of the hardware on. But what you're going to do is take this smaller spacer block and put that over the end of the bolt, and you're going to want to make sure that that spacer block fits flat into the indentation on the back of the bumper. So we'll push that on, and then we're going to follow that up with a split lock washer and a hex nut. Now we can grab these backing plates, and we want the side with 2 holes here to line up with the 2 holes in our base plate. So that's just going to set like that. And then we're going to take our hex bolts, shorter ones here, and run them through the backing plate and out through the base plate. And then on the other side, we're going to secure them using a split lock washer and a hex nut. We're going to grab our smaller pipe spacer here and slide that underneath our base plate and our frame rail. Again, you want to make sure that the holes line up. And coming from the top down, we're going to take our 4-inch bolt, put that Loctite on it, and drop it all the way down through. Here on the bottom, we're going to fasten it with a split lock washer and a hex nut. Now that we have all of our hardware in place and hand tight, we can start to snug everything down. I like to start with this bolt first on each side, and that way, from snugging that down first, it'll kind of help draw everything up together to make sure it's nice and level. So I'll hold the head of the bolt steady with a 3/4 inch wrench and use a 3/4 inch socket to snug down the nut. Now I'm going to tighten down all 4 of the bolts here on our bumper beam. Kind of like to go side to side, and that'll just help everything draw together evenly. And finally, we can come back and tighten down the bolts here remaining on the side. Now we can torque down all of our hardware to these specifications and the instructions, and I'm going to use that same order to torque all the bolts that we use to snug them down. So now I went ahead and took the included zip ties and just zip tied the ambient air temperature sensor to the main receiver brace here. Now at this point, it would be a great time to install some of your other flat towing components, like your diode wiring and a braking system, for example. That way we have all this extra room to work. It just makes life a lot easier. If you're not installing the components or already have them in place, what you do is hold your fascia up to the front here and refer to the instructions as well, and just kind of mark out where you need to cut. You trim the fascia and reinstall it the opposite way that we removed it. So I went ahead and held our front fascia up to the front of our Explorer, and what I did is look and see where we're going to need to cut out part of our grill. That way our components can pass through it. So on the other side, I just marked with a Sharpie where I want to cut, and after looking at this, I think it's going to be easier just to remove this center section. It's going to be a little easier to handle and cut. The way this gets removed is these little tabs. So when this is in place, what you'll do is simply just push out on these tabs and work this piece up kind of as you go. So to get this trimmed out, I'm just going to use this little air saw. This is just plastic, so you can use a sharp utility knife or a Dremel tool, anything like that, to get these openings created. This is what it looks like, and I simply reinstalled it by just pushing it back down in place. Now with an extra set of hands, we can put our fascia back on. Now you don't want to forget to plug any electrical connectors back in if you removed any. In our case, we have our fog lights here, so I'll pop them in. Then we can push our fascia back in place and get it re-secured. So the front fascia was kind of fighting me a little bit, not wanting to go in place as easily as it should. And what I found was a little piece of plastic was actually hitting our base plate. So I did have to trim this little extra section out right here to give us the clearance we need. From here, we're just going to simply re-secure our fascia the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Direct Connect baseplate kit on our 2015 Ford Explorer.